This is Stacy McKibben with the Master Communicator podcast, where CEOs, senior leaders, and C-suite executives share their advice. It's 6 questions in 9 minutes because the best leaders know how to share their ideas concisely and quickly. Let's jump right in. Question number 1. In a few sentences, please tell us who you are and what you do.
Hi, I am Belle Walker with Bellevue Consulting. I take my clients from friction to function. I think of organizations as having 3 main components: the strategy and goal they have to accomplish, the people who have to accomplish it, and the structures and systems that bind those people together and either lift them up towards the goal or block them from ever getting there. I focus on those structures and systems and processes. And that's,
That's
what I do.
amazing. I'm sure you're going to have a lot of opinions about change then, because I can imagine that as you're implementing systems and things like that, you might encounter a resistance or two to said change. So that leads me greatly into question number 2, which is what's the best thing about leading people through change from your perspective?
From my perspective, the best part is the moment that
Mhm.
comes eventually, right? There's often that resistance, there's often that struggle. You would think going friction to function, that function would be exciting and people would want to get there, but there's that love of the familiar, the fear of change. And when they finally realize that the changes are truly making their work, their lives, their satisfaction better, and they can go, that's my favorite part.
It's almost like a relief, I bet, on their part, right? So it's like they can actually let the resistance go and be more accepting of kind of the new ideas.
Yeah, it's an advantage of most of the work I do being to either address or head off pain
Mm.
that you get that relief.
Oh, that's so great because you hear so much about how stress and anxiety is a big part of work, and I think systems really help to alleviate that. Yeah. So, what piece of advice then would you give to other leaders about leading through change or implementing change?
I honestly, nothing world shattering. I would really emphasize the need to encourage buy in and gather feedback and perspectives early and often. The more people who feel ownership of that change, the more people who are excited to drive with you rather than being driven, the more effective and fun the whole process is going to be.
Yeah, and I can imagine that you do you even maybe try to find champions of some of these new ideas, right? Individuals that you can get excited at the water cooler.
Yeah, and emphasizing, right, the lead from any chair perspective, especially when there's a company that needs to shift some of their practices from one thing they've been doing to something new. The folks who are on the front lines or in the middle of the organization are going to be feeling a lot of that pain, and getting their voices early and often are probably going to get you to where you need to be conceptually a lot faster, and then are going to take those ideas into reality much more smoothly.
Lead from any chair. That was the gold right there, Miss Walker. That was pretty cool. I often hear from other leaders that keeping teams engaged remotely has actually been quite a challenge, right? That they're used to being able to do the drive by or walk by leadership. And now they don't have the benefit of kind of overhearing things or bumping into people, in the proverbial, lunchroom. What's been your experience and what tips can you give us that you've seen that have improved that experience?
My favorite tip is the 10 minutes of laughter,
Hmm.
which I get a lot of initial resistance to, but everyone who's implemented it has loved it. And so this is putting a half-hour block on the calendar every single day. It seems terrifying. That's a lot of time. But if you think about how much time we were spending when we were co-located, walking around at the coffee cooler, in the break room, talking to each other, a half hour is kind of nothing when we don't
Hmm.
have really any of that anymore. So you block off that half hour, but you only plan to stay on for 10 minutes. And in those 10 minutes, no work talk. The goal is for everyone to laugh at least once that day. At the end of those 10 minutes, people who have other things to do go back to the other things. People who have that aha moment, oh, Stacy, I just thought of something. Can we keep talking? Can then have 20 minutes free to go do that. And so that's been a huge pickup, both in terms of morale and connection, but also in terms of being able to have those sort of serendipitous moments, despite the lack of convenient serendipity in a remote world.
I love that. You make me think of, early on when I used to plan my spontaneity.
Exactly.
I think sometimes though you have to do that and you have to bake that in order to create those opportunities. I love that. 10 minutes of laughter. That sounds kind of fun. I feel like I need to come with a joke though.
One thing I've seen work well with that is rotating who has an idea, but you can take tours of each other's spaces. You can have meet the pets days. You can do funny hats. You can come with a joke. There's turns out it's not that hard to laugh most days.
Especially if you use yourself as fodder.
Exactly.
That's great. I love that. So then what daily practice is most important to you as a leader?
I think for me, it's well. So right now I'm a solopreneur, and so at the moment, what's most important to me is checking in and making sure that I am bringing meaningful change to my clients because that's my driving factor right now. In times when I've led teams, the daily practice that has been most important to me is to do a check of when did I last connect with each of my team members? Because even in a co-located world, I would travel, I would, have days where I just didn't really see anyone. And not that you necessarily need to connect with everyone every day, but asking yourself, when did I last connect with someone? Helped me make sure that I was keeping those relationships strong, that I was touching base regularly. And I found that making that a daily practice made it much easier to maintain that balance.
I love that. Yeah. And I mean, again, if you just, carve out the time to even just, as you say, think about who you've talked to and when, it often then sparks well, what about this? And what's the next meaningful opportunity or time to do that?
Exactly. Planning in that spontaneity.
Again, I love that. All right. Magic question number 6 for you. What other successful business leaders like yourself, Belle, should be on the show? In other words, who else should we be paying attention to and listening to?
Ooh, there are many, many leaders. One woman who I've drawn a lot of inspiration from recently is a woman named Kimberly Weefling, who does leadership training and organizational DNA, all sorts of great culture leader things. She's a physicist by training who never believed in the touchy-feely stuff. And then one day she learned that the only way to get anything done was to actually connect with the people around her. And now she brings that message to others, and I find it deeply inspirational.
Wow, that's great. And it's so true, right? Systems run your business, but people run your systems. And so, as dynamic as you might want to be on the system side, at the end of the day, it's still people interacting with people, it's still people buying from people, and we're never going to get away from that.
And speaking of systems, Dr. Lydia Hughes Evans is a systems thinker who brings her skills and perspective pretty much exclusively to nonprofit organizations, bridging those gaps between the board and the staff and making sure that the expectations that are going either direction have the processes and systems they need to actually deliver.
Wow. And I
She's
love
pretty
doing it for
great.
nonprofits because, again, it's like you get that sense of doing well by doing good. So that's amazing. Anybody else you wanted to list? Not that you need any more. I just was checking.
Ooh, those are the two that are. Oh, and Beatrice Stonebanks, if you haven't spoken to her,
Mhm.
is also a very inspiring leader on the sales side. She has all sorts of fabulous tools, tricks, techniques to really bring your presence to the next level. Make sure that you are putting out into the world the message that you want to pursue and allowing the people who are ready to receive it to come to you.
Well, I think she'd be pretty proud of you, Belle, because I think you're doing that very well right now, really articulating your message well and inspiring others to take action. Thank you so much for being on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure having you here. I'm curious if somebody wanted to reach out and introduce themselves, how might they find you?
Thank you so much for having me. It has been wonderful. The two best ways to reach me are to either go to my website, where there's a contact form and all my contact information, which
Mhm.
is bellevueconsulting.com.
Yeah,
I'm sure it'll be in the show notes. And
it
then
will.
LinkedIn, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn as well, Belle K. Walker.
That's excellent. And my audience knows the links will be down in the description so they can find you there. And I encourage everybody to go out and reach out and say hi. But until then, this is Stacy McKibben with the Master Communicator podcast. For more ideas and insights, please do check us out at www.concilioteam.com. And we look forward to seeing you again next time. Take care.